G'day Plantifyers, Jess here, and welcome back to our little garden called Serenity Valley in the Sunshine Coast Hinterland, Queensland, Australia. And today I'm doing some spring cleaning in the garden. It's early autumn here, and while the calendar says it's still winter, the plants are telling me that spring is on the way. Things have started growing a little bit faster, the wildflowers are coming out, and the nasturtium, amongst other things, has pretty much taken over throughout the winter period here in the garden. So it's time to clean the place up a little bit. So today I'm going to show you how I spring clean my garden, removing some things, pruning other things back, and getting it ready for some spring planting. So it may surprise you to hear that winter is a peak growing season for us here. It doesn't frost where I am, and while the days are short, there's still a decent amount of sunshine and enough warmth for most things to grow generally okay. So that is why these nasturtiums have just basically taken over the place. These are all self-seeded from last year. And while I did pull out a bunch of them when they were all babies, I let a couple of them go, and you can see the result of that. Now, we eat the nasturtium all the time. We eat the leaves, we eat the flowers. It's a wonderful trap crop. It's a wonderful crop to have in the garden, but it also eats up a lot of nutrients. Not to mention just taking up more than its fair share of space, blocking the pathway, blocking light through to some of the other plants I want to grow, especially on these trellises at this time of year. So it has to go. And that way, once I've cleaned all of this out, I will have space to grow some new crops over these trellises. Now here I am removing an old button squash that didn't really do so well over winter. Not the ideal time of year for squash really, or pumpkins. I don't generally try to grow them, but it was from last autumn and it was just kind of languishing there because I hadn't gotten around to clearing it up and reusing the space. So time to get rid of that. On the other side of the trellis, you can see there's even more nasturtiums. There's also some kind of sad old tomatoes that just didn't do very well there. I think perhaps where they were didn't get enough sun. This garden doesn't get a huge amount of sun during the winter because of its aspect, so it's great for growing certain crops but not so great for others. I mean, obviously you can see the nasturtium is perfectly happy here, but I have tomatoes growing elsewhere in my garden because tomato growing season here is actually over the winter. And elsewhere in my garden that gets a lot more sun, the tomatoes are doing really, really well, and we're about to have our first crops of big tomatoes very shortly. The nice thing about our climate is that we can grow things like that over winter. It's really challenging to grow tomatoes, especially big tomatoes, over the summer here because we have Queensland fruit fly, which just likes to destroy everything fruit wise, any sort of fruiting plant, it likes to get in there. And also because of the excessive amounts of rain that we get over the summer, tomatoes just don't really like it. So we try to grow them over the winter. Here I have a trellis that had some snow peas on it. They're still growing, but they're a variety that I decided to experiment with this year. I think they were called golden potted. I'm not 100% sure on that. But they weren't very nice. The taste was just kind of bland. They weren't very big sized, so I just decided to pull them out and make the space available to something else. Here I'm also cutting back some globe amaranth. This stuff is an absolute legend in the garden. If you want something that will grow and flower for months and months and months, globe amaranth is it. Oh yes, we have also been getting a crop of winter eggplants, which is quite unusual. Or maybe it's not. This is actually my first whole year growing eggplants, and we had heaps over summer. Then the plants just, went dormant as I would expect in autumn. But we got a crop just like in the last few weeks, so I don't quite know what's going on there. But hey, whatever works. I'm always happy to get food out of the garden, even when it's unexpected. So back to the globe amaranth, that comes in a few different colours. It's technically edible, but the flowers don't really feel particularly delicious in your mouth. But it just is a wonderful crop to bring some colour to the garden. You can see here that my chilies are still fruiting. They have not stopped. They have slowed down since the weather cooled down in autumn, but they have been fruiting all year round. So that has been a pleasant surprise. And we have some broad beans. I don't know if we'll actually get beans off them. We'll just eat the leaves, and a lovely sugarloaf cabbage growing really well. Haven't had any pest issues with that so far, fingers crossed. You can see that I try to dot my brassicas throughout the rest of the garden, so I don't do big crops of the same thing in the one bed. I like to grow everything polyculture style, like nature intended, and I find that that does reduce the pest pressure because you don't have big lots of the same thing growing in the one spot. Here I'm removing yet another nasturtium. I actually left one behind in this area because there was a new baby one coming up, so I just decided to remove this older one and leave the baby one there to grow because it has some lovely red flowers. I have a variety of different colours scattered throughout the garden. And over here we have a few things. We've got a dahlia that finished flowering ages ago, and I just have not cut the old stems off, so I'm getting them out of here today. I'm toying with perhaps moving this dahlia because it is huge and it takes up a lot of space, but it does look so gorgeous. I think if you go back to my March or April what I'm growing video, you'll see what it looks like in flower. And here on the trellis we have a winged bean plant which has been super productive since early spring. I think it wasn't productive in fruit, but it was productive in edible leaves. And then we had months of beans to eat, but now it has kind of decided to die back. This is my first year growing this, and it is apparently a perennial, so I don't know whether it just kind of dies back a bit over winter and then we'll get a new flush of growth in spring or early summer. So while I have pruned it right back, I haven't actually completely removed it from this trellis. I've left some thicker, older stems on the trellis in the hope that it will re-sprout from those stems. So I had a supervisor. Alice was outside for a couple of hours sitting in the sun. I don't know if you can see that she's on a harness because we can't let her be free because she tends to climb trees and get on roofs and basically go places we can't then get a hold of her. So here I've got some purple king beans that I'm cleaning up and collecting the seeds from. I just left them on the vine to dry out so that I had seeds to replant in the not too distant future. Although I have found that they tend to grow best for me in autumn. Okay, so it is time to take this first load to the compost heap because I honestly don't think I could get anything more on that trailer, and to be honest, it might cause a problem if I do. So we have a few different compost systems, one of which is this 3-bay system that we have made ourselves, in case you couldn't tell, from some stuff we had lying around. And the bay on the left is the one that is going to be used most recently, and the 2 on the right we just fill up whenever. We don't do a kind of official 3-bay system, it's just more space to fill up because we need as much as we can get. We have a couple of black bins too, but they just sort of are for stuff that we don't want to put into this system. But it's great, all of this nutrients is not lost, you know, we're not losing any of the nutrients from this stuff that's grown in the garden. It's just going to get broken down and recycled right back into the garden in 6 months to a year or so. So let's head back down to the bamboo house garden and do some more pruning. So this plant here is probably kind of in the wrong space. Oh, you can see I've got some tomatoes growing a little bit wild through there, so I need to find them and put them back up on a trellis while I prune so that they don't get in the way. The one that I am pruning is a pepino, and it's starting to flower and fruit, but we found that if we let it go too crazy, it just takes over this entire part of the garden. So I have to keep it controlled. And also, if the fruits touch the ground, they just end up rotting as soon as the rain starts. So I'm just pruning off all of the bits that are kind of falling onto the ground here and just leaving the bits that are the top. There are some fruit that are going to be sacrificed, but that's okay because they probably rot anyway. Some more of that globe amaranth here that just needs a little bit of a trim, so I'm not taking it all out, I'm just getting rid of the bits that were kind of hanging over the side. And there's some more for the compost. Here we have a parsley plant that has very much gone to flower. Again, I want to keep some of the flowers because I like to leave them for the pollinators, but I wanted to clear up all these bits that were just hanging over the edge and taking up this pathway and just neaten and tidy it up a little bit. So there's still plenty of parsley there for us to eat, and there's also, thankfully, plenty of parsley flowers left for the pollinators to enjoy once they go into full flower. So I'm happy with the amount of pruning I've done, got those trellises ready for a new crop, made some space in the pathways, and now it's time to clean up the detritus that has kind of appeared underneath all of that stuff and just all over the place. We have a crushed gravel base here in this garden, which is fantastic underfoot, and it's very good for drainage because we have, during the summer, we have monsoonal rains regularly, and that's why having good drainage is really, really important. But it does mean that we need to keep it neat and tidy by giving it a lovely rake every so often. And we also need to pull up weeds, because you'd be amazed how many plants like to grow in this stuff. Gardening has certainly given me an appreciation for the hardiness of weeds and grass. They seem to be able to grow pretty much anywhere, but at least they're pretty easy to pull out of this as well because it's not very compacted. As you can see, I have two different rakes for different parts of the garden because of the width of the walkways. We were very intentional when we planned out this garden because I wanted the central walkways to be nice and wide so I could get, a wheelbarrow in there if necessary. But then those side bits, I only just needed to be able to walk through basically. So while I can use the big rake for the middle, I can't use the big rake for all those little slightly more awkward bits. So you can see some more weeds growing in the soil there, but they are the most ubiquitous weed in our garden. Thankfully though, of course, they don't have very deep roots, so they are very easy to pull out. But I am constantly pulling these out, but that's just part of life really, isn't it? Always weeding, always pruning, so that things can grow better. Probably the most challenging part of this process is that as you're raking, you also rake up quite a bit of the gravel because it is so fine. So it's kind of a case of trying to redistribute the gravel and then lightly raking the stuff over and over again to try to remove the gravel, and of course you add more gravel. So it's a bit of a challenge, but it has to be done. And it just means a little bit of the gravel sometimes ends up in the compost heap, which, to be honest, I don't think is a bad thing, because it probably means that it's adding some rock mineral nutrition to the compost. At least that's the perspective I'm going to go with, and hope that there's some truth in that. But it's really satisfying to finish this up, clean it all up, and see what it looks like once all of the mess has been removed. I mean, I like a messy garden. It's my style. I'm not interested in a super neat and tidy regimented garden, but there does come a time where you need to tidy things up a little bit. And the final job for today was to add a little bit of fertilizer. I have some organic pelletized fertilizer that I had lying around, and since my compost is not quite ready to go on the garden, I thought I would put some of this into these garden beds just to give them a little bit of a boost. I am hoping to get some compost in the next month or two to put on the gardens and give them even more nutrients, but for now this hopefully will be enough to keep them going for the next little while. We also have a worm farm, so I've got worm castings, we have some weed tea that we make. So we have a few different ways that we fertilize the garden. And here's a finished product. Alice is back in here with me now. I don't know if you could see, but there's a fence around this, so she's kind of trapped, sort of. She does kind of know to get out, but thankfully most of the time she doesn't think about it. But it's looking lovely and cleaned up and a bit more spacious, ready to plant out with a whole bunch of new climbing plants and various other plants in the next few weeks. I'm looking forward to getting some cucumbers in and some zucchini and lots more for the spring and summer garden ahead. So thank you so much for hanging out with me while I spring cleaned my garden today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video, and bye for now.